Hey there, welcome back to the channel. It's been a while since I made a video. If you're new here, my name's Greg. Today I'm going to make some Italian
Cacciatore.
Today I'm going to make some Italian dry cured cacciatore. I'm making this cacciatore from a recipe from this book, The Art of Making Fermented Sausages by Adam and Stanley Mariansky. I think it's Mariansky. In any case, cacciatore. It's an Italian small dry sausage. Cacciatore means hunter in Italian, and the story goes that hunters carried this sausage as a snack on long hunting trips. So this sausage is mostly pork with a little bit of beef. This is my meat for my cacciatore. Calls for 30% back fat. Calls for 60% lean pork. I'm using ham. Could maybe be more lean, but I don't mind a little extra fat in my sausage. And it calls for 10% beef. Just going to cut all this up. Oh, here's the other beef. Yeah, it looked a little small. Here's my 10% beef. I'm going to cut everything up into pieces that'll fit into my grinder. I'm just going to put this in my freezer, let it firm up a bit before I grind it. Be right back. The ingredients are salt, cure number 2, dextrose to feed the culture, pepper, doesn't say what color, but I used black pepper, some coriander, some caraway seeds, some red pepper, and some garlic, as well as TSPX starter culture. Calls for 3% salt. I think that's going to be way too salty for me. 2.5% is plenty for a cured sausage, so I'm going 2.5%. We'll start with some black peppercorns, some coriander. I'm going to put those into my cold, dry frying pan. Going to set them on some low heat, start toasting them a little. Going to weigh up a little bit of caraway seed. Going to add that to my frying pan. Cure number 2, because this says it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks, although I don't think it's going to take that long. I think it will take more than 30 days, though. So definitely going in with the cure number 2. Gotta have salt. I'm using kosher salt today. Any salt, as long as it's pure salt, will be fine. Going to use some dextrose because this will use a starter culture, and that starter culture needs food, and this will be the food for that starter culture. As it consumes this, it will create the lactic acid, and that's what will drop the pH. Going to add some garlic powder. This recipe didn't specify whether it's fresh garlic or garlic powder, but with the small amount it's calling for, I'm thinking it's probably garlic powder. Takes a bit more fresh garlic to get the garlic flavor. And some red pepper flakes. Should add a nice little heat to this. Okay, I'm going to go grind up those toasting spices. Well, there's my spice mixture for my cacciatore. Set that aside till I'm ready for it. Step 1 is to grind the pork and back fat through a 5mm plate. Grind the beef with a 3mm plate. Had my meat in the freezer down at 30 degrees or so. So that's going to be just beautiful. I'm going to put that in my grinder. For my 10% beef, just not going to worry about that being finer than the rest of it. It's such a small amount. This is calling for a 5mm die. And I have a 4.5. That's as close as I have to a 5. It's also my smallest. If I were going to grind the beef finer, I would do the beef on this, and then I do the pork on my 7mm, making the whole sausage a little coarser. But I think this is meant to be a finer sausage. And I'm just letting the grinder do the work. Not using my plunger. Gonna run a small handful back through. Find if you make even a little ball like that. I've heard that helps. Shut her down as soon as I can. Don't need to create any excess heat. Get that nice, loose, crumbly texture. That's beautiful. Step 2, mix all ingredients with meat. Easy enough. Except I am going to wake my culture up in some water before I use it. They don't say anything about that in this book, but that's how I like to do it. Cacciatore recipe is calling for TSPX starter culture. This is a slower fermenting one. Ferments at cooler temperatures. If you don't have a pH pen, you can just follow the recipe and let it go for 3 days. Putting a 1/4 teaspoon in. To that culture, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of water. Or a little less because I'm not making that much. I like to do this 15 minutes before, maybe a half hour before I mix up my salami. Got my cotton liners on underneath my gloves because this is super cold. It's right around 30 degrees right now, and I want it to stay super cold. Plus, that'll hurt my hands if I start mixing when it's that cold. Gonna add my salt, my cure, spices. Gonna add my starter culture bacteria. Gonna mix it till it's sticky. Starting to get there. Don't want to overmix either. Starting to see the furry look I like to see, so I always test, and sure enough, can lift the bowl pretty easily. So next test is how well does it stick? It sticks, but it's coming off, so it's not quite tacky enough. All right, it's looking good to me. Get a pretty good look at that. So we got little strands coming up. It's looking kind of, you can see the strands stretching out and reaching out. It's a little fuzzy. And sticking to my hand really well. Stuff firmly into large diameter 36 by 40 millimeter hog casings or beef rounds and make 6-inch links. Well, I'm going to be using 42 millimeter hog casings because that's what I have, and I like that diameter. I think that'll be great. And honestly, much smaller, I'm not sure if it would take 30 days. For cure number 2, it's good for it to take at least 30 days. I've had some questions about that in comments recently, saying, well, isn't cure number 1 for cooked sausages and cure number 2 is for dried sausages? The sodium nitrite in cure number 1 takes 24 hours for 50% of the nitrate to be bound as nitric oxide, and the other 50% is slowly bound over the next few weeks to nitric oxide. So cure number 1 is plenty good for even cured sausages that take less than a month. The sodium nitrate, it's just a small amount of it, but the sodium nitrate in cure number 2 takes several weeks to convert to sodium nitrite. The nitrate can't be bound as nitric oxide. It needs to convert to sodium nitrite before it will be bound as nitric oxide. And you need it to be bound as nitric oxide to prevent having excessive amounts of nitrosamines, which are known to be carcinogenic. So to avoid nitrosamines in the cured sausage, we stick to the rule of cure number 1 for less than a month or so, and cure number 2 for more than a month or so. Say much less than a 40 millimeter, and I think it would be ready in less than a month. That's just what my experience tells me. I'm not trying to claim to have more experience than these guys, because I know I don't. I know that much less than 40 millimeter, in my particular drying situation, that's not going to take more than 30 days. But I'm going to take one of these gloves off so I don't get my stuffer all funkified on the outside. Kind of launching it in there. Really, it's not as big a deal if you have a shallow hopper like this. But if you have a deeper one, like a 10-pound stuffer, you might have to launch it in there. Push out as much excess air as I can right now. That's stuffed. Good to go. So I like to get some water in there, finding the opening, 2 fingers in there so it's nice and open, and I'm just dipping that in the water so I'm getting some more water on the inside. These have already been flushed and stretched. I've rinsed the inside and outside, but it's just going to help it slide over my horn. I'm also going to lube my horn up with some water. And I'm just going to slide it on there. You know, I probably could have used the next size up horn, I'm realizing, but it's a little late to change it out now. It's always best to use the biggest horn that your casing will easily slide over. As long as it slides nice and easy, you'll be golden. But with the smaller horn, you need to be careful about not letting air get back up it. I want to be careful not to make these too tight because I am going to be linking them. One way to test is you can pinch it as it's coming off. That might be a little shy of 6 inches. I was going for a 6-inch length because, well, that's what it calls for. And you know what? 6 inches is pretty average. How I like to link these is I come up about 6 inches, pinch it. I'm going to go up about another 6 inches. I already have the pinch because I did it as I was coming off the horn. Now I'm just going to twist it 3 times away from me. All going to go away from me. So now I'm going to come up 6 inches, go up another 6 inches, and I'm just going to twist that away from me. I'm going to do the same. Come up and pinch, go up to the next one and pinch, twist that away from me. You can twist them as many times as it takes to get them tight. I want to give these a few pokes where I see air pockets, and maybe a few anyway, to help these dry out. Flip that over. Same thing. Gosh, look at the girth of that. That's impressive. All right, after we've made our links, step 4, dip into surface mold growing solution. That's the protective layer of white mold that's going to help fight off any bad molds. It's also going to aid in consistent drying, as well as provide like its own funky flavor. I'll be mixing up some mold 600, making a couple of different sausages, a salami, and they're both going to benefit from a protective layer of white mold, Penicillium nalgiavensis. So I'm going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of my mold. To that, I'm going to add about a 1/4 cup fresh well water. If you don't have good clean water, make sure you use some distilled water. Chlorine will kill this mold, and well, that would be counterproductive. But I want to do this at least a good 8 hours before I want to use it. So I'm just going to set that aside. Now I'm going to take my mold solution that I mixed up last night, and I'm just going to brush it all over these things. And then we're going to ferment it at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, for 72 hours at about 90% humidity. I'm going to check mine with a pH pen, kind of keep tabs on it and see how long it takes. I'm going to take the little piece that was remaining in my hopper of my sausage stuffer. I'm going to wrap it up in some cling film. I'm going to wrap it up tight. I'm going to throw that in with my sausage links. Before I ferment these, get a starting weight of what they are. So I'm going to tear that out. I'm going to jot that down. Toss my tester piece in there. I'm going to close this up. That should keep it at least 90% humidity. So it says 72 hours. I'll see you in 3 days. It's been a little over 72 hours, closer to like 74, 75 hours. See, the white mold is definitely starting to grow. I'm curious what the pH is. You know, if you follow the recipe, it should be in a safe zone. And it is. It's like 4.88. So basically 4.9. That's just perfect. See, it has a firmer texture. It's come together. It's like almost, it's a little squishy. When you squeeze in on it, it comes back. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hang these up in my drying cabinet. Dry for 2 days at 18 to 16 degrees Celsius, which is 60 to 64 Fahrenheit, and 85 to 90% humidity. Then dry at 16 to 12 degrees, which is 54 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and 80 to 85% humidity. So for the first 2 days, they're saying to dry it a little warmer and a little more humid, and then go down. I'm just going to put it in my drying cabinet, which runs at about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which I guess would be about 12 degrees Celsius, and it runs at about 80% humidity. I'm not going to worry about the 2 days at the warmer temperature. I just don't have an easy way to do that. It makes sense for me just to put it in the cabinet. It'll be great. This cabinet is about 55 degrees and averages 80% humidity. That's where my Cacciatore has been for the last 37 days, and It's lost 39% of its humidity, so 39% of its moisture, so it's ready to go. Let's give it a try. It says in about 6 to 8 weeks, a shrink of 30% should be achieved. Well, mine only took 37 days, and maybe that's because I didn't start it at that higher humidity, warmer temperatures. I don't know. But I used a fatter casing, and it still only took 37 days. Came out looking pretty darn good to me. Store sausages at 10 to 15 degrees Celsius, which is 50 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit, and 75% humidity. So I'm just going to keep mine in my cabinet at 55 degrees Fahrenheit and about 80% humidity. It'll continue to dry, but real slow. And honestly, I'm going to give some of these away and just be eating them, and I don't think they're going to last very long. I don't really think storing them is going to be a problem. If you did want to store them for the long term, wash off that mold with vinegar or wine and then vacuum seal them. Leave them in the fridge. They'd be fine. But these are a small sausage. I didn't make that many. I'm just going to eat them. All right, let's see what this is all about. Really liking the looks of that on the inside. Got a great bind with the casing. Really good fat definition. Let's see, how does it taste? Tastes good. I gotta have another piece. So this white mold, the Penicillium algivensis, it's 100% edible. It's like the white mold on the outside of a brie cheese. You don't want to eat it. You could wash it off with some wine or some vinegar, or you could try to separate the casing. It's pretty well bound though. Definitely catching the caraway and the garlic. A little bit of heat. For me, it could have a little more heat, but you know, I think for some people, that's probably the right amount. Just a little bit. Yeah, that's a great little sausage. And look at the fat in there. That is just a really beautiful looking piece of charcuterie. Very tasty. Not too hard to make. Doesn't take too long. Italian dry cured cacciatore. Give it a shot. If you like my video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. Put some love into your food. Peace.